She told me she needed space after her trip, so I handed her a manila folder with 7 photos, 2 eyewitness statements, and a hotel receipt with someone else's name on it. The room went quiet, real quiet, like the breath had been vacuumed out of the walls. She didn't even ask what was in it, because she already knew. My name's David, and this is the story of how I found out my fiancée never planned to stay faithful, not even long enough to say I do. It started with the kind of calm you only get when everything's about to go wrong. Her name was Rachel. We'd been together 5 years. We met at a volunteer event, sorting donated clothes in a high school gym that smelled like rubber and old memories. She was folding jeans. I was trying to make small talk without sounding like a guy who just wanted her number. She laughed at one of my dumb jokes, not because it was funny, but because it was sincere. And that laugh? That was it for me. We went out that night for tacos and ended up walking until sunrise. I thought I'd met my person. Rachel was smart, quick-witted, gorgeous in a way that didn't feel intentional. She had this messy hair she never bothered to fix and a tattoo of a small plane on her wrist, said it reminded her to keep moving forward. I didn't ask what she was running from. We built a life that looked good from the outside. House in the suburbs. His and hers coffee mugs. A dog named Wally who slept at our feet. The kind of life where people posted comments like #goals when we shared photos. But you know what nobody posts? Doubt. Little cracks. Tiny betrayals you can't prove yet, only feel. It started a few months before the wedding. She mentioned taking a short solo trip before everything got hectic. Said she wanted time to think, to clear her head. She used the word reset. I asked if she was okay. She said she was just overwhelmed. Said she needed a little quiet before forever. And I believed her. I even helped her pack. Bought her travel-sized shampoo. Drove her to the airport, kissed her goodbye, and told her I'd be counting the days. She said she'd call. She didn't. Not much, anyway. A couple of texts. A blurry sunset photo. Hugs and kisses, here and there. It felt hollow. Like someone trying to play the role of a caring partner instead of just being one. But I didn't panic, not yet. Until one night, 3 days into her trip, I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Nate, an old college buddy. We drifted apart, no bad blood. Just life. He was calling from a beach town 2 states over. He sounded weird. Careful. Hey, man. I think I just saw Rachel. Is she supposed to be on a trip right now? My stomach dropped. Yeah, I said. Why? He hesitated. Then told me he saw her at a rooftop bar, not alone. With a guy. Holding hands. Acting like 2 people without a care in the world. I didn't say much. Just thanked him. Hung up. Then I opened her location sharing, something we'd both agreed on years ago, more for convenience than trust. It was off. She'd turned it off. And that's when the picture started to come into focus. I called in a favor, a guy I knew from work who used to do freelance surveillance. Nothing shady, just private security, background checks, corporate vetting. I gave him a name, a photo, a rough idea of the town she said she'd be in. He still had contacts in the area, ex-cops, hotel clerks, bar staff. Said he'd pull a few strings. 2 days later, he sent me the folder. Photos. Receipts. Witnesses. She wasn't in the town she'd told me. She wasn't alone. And she wasn't thinking. She was erasing. That's what betrayal feels like. Not just being cheated on, but being erased from someone's truth. When she came home, she was all fake smiles and forced hugs. Said the trip had helped. That she was ready now. Ready to build something real. Like she could just walk back into our life and pretend nothing happened. Maybe she didn't know how to tell me. Maybe she thought if she said nothing, it might all just pass. I nodded. Then I handed her the folder. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't accuse. Just said, I thought you might want to see this before we pick out the cake. Her face didn't fall. It crumbled, like a dam that had been patched with tape finally letting go. She didn't open it right away. She didn't have to. Because the truth? She'd already lived it. And now, so had I. She sat on the couch like the air had thickened. Still hadn't opened the folder. Still hadn't said a word. Rachel always had a way of controlling a room without moving a muscle. It was in the silence, in the stillness. She used to say stillness was strength. Now it looked more like a shield she was hoping would save her. I watched her eyes track the folder like it might explode. When she finally spoke, her voice was hoarse, like she'd swallowed sand. Where did you get this? Not what is this? Not I don't understand. Just straight to where? That told me everything. I had questions, I said. So I found answers. She didn't look up. I waited. Let the silence sit heavy between us. Like fog that wouldn't burn off. She reached for the folder. Opened it slow, Like she already knew what each page would say but needed to confirm the world wasn't about to spin out beneath her feet. First photo, her. On a balcony. A drink in her hand. A man's hand on her hip. Second photo, them at dinner. Candlelight. Shoulders leaned in. Third, a hotel receipt. 2 names. 1 room. Her fingers froze there. Then she said it. That phrase people cling to when they're cornered and scared. It wasn't what it looked like. I almost laughed. But it wasn't funny. It was pathetic. Then tell me what it was. She blinked hard, once, like she was trying to clear fog from her own eyes. I needed space, she said. That wasn't a lie. I needed to know if I was marrying you for the right reasons. If I was ready. Ready for what? I asked. Honesty? Loyalty? Monogamy? She winced, then whispered he was someone from before. Someone I never really closed the door on. And there it was. Not just a betrayal. A reopening. She didn't find someone new. She went looking for someone old. Someone who made her question everything after she'd promised it to me. I thought I could see him, she said, talk to him, and finally shut the door. But it didn't go that way. Her voice cracked. I didn't tell you because I was scared. Scared that if I said it out loud, you'd leave before I figured myself out. But more than that, I was scared he still had a piece of me I hadn't taken back. It never does, I said. She looked at me, and for the first time since she walked in that door, I saw her face, not the version she curated. The real one. Raw. Guilty. Caught. I didn't sleep with him, she said. I swear. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so far past the point of matching. Don't, I said. If that's your defense, then you don't understand what this is about. You flew across the country to find out if the past still meant something, and then you lied to me while holding my future in your hands. I stood up. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Heavy, tight, cold. She reached for me. Please. Let me explain. You've had days to explain, I said. You could have called me from the airport, from the hotel, after dinner. But you didn't. I was scared. No, I said. You were selfish. You wanted to know if the old flame still sparked, and you didn't care if it burned the whole future down. She sank back into the couch. Our couch. The one we picked out together. The one we almost fell asleep on after too many glasses of wine and wedding registry lists. She looked small now. Not in stature. In presence. All that charm, that spark, that command gone. What was left was a woman who'd bet everything on a lie, and lost the only person who would have stayed anyway, if she'd just told the truth. I want to fix this, she said quietly. I know, I said. But the version of me who didn't know? He's gone. You killed him the minute you bought that second wine glass. She broke then. Tears. Not the loud, dramatic kind. The quiet kind. The kind that come when the mask finally slips and there's nothing underneath but regret and an empty flight itinerary. I didn't comfort her. Not because I wanted to be cruel, but because I'd comforted her for 5 years. And now, it was time I comforted myself. I walked out of the room, out of the apartment, and into a world that suddenly felt sharper, louder, more real. She had space now. More than she ever bargained for. And I had something else. Freedom. I didn't go far. Just down the block, to the corner diner. The kind of place with cracked red vinyl booths and a waitress who knows your order before you sit down. I slid into the booth, ordered coffee I didn't want, and stared out the window like the answers might walk by if I looked hard enough. I thought about calling my brother, or my dad, or someone who'd let me bleed in peace. But I didn't. I wasn't ready for the sympathy, the head tilt, the slow, careful sentences. I didn't even want to hear my own voice. I just needed to sit in the silence and feel something that didn't talk back. I wasn't thinking straight. Because betrayal does that. It doesn't just hurt, it scrambles the wiring. You start questioning every memory, every kiss, every quiet Sunday morning when you thought they were just sleepy, but maybe they were distant. Maybe they were somewhere else entirely. I sat there for hours, watching the coffee cool, watching couples walk past the window, holding hands like trust was easy. I thought about calling my brother, or my dad, or someone who'd let me bleed in peace. But I didn't. Because I wasn't ready for the sympathy, the head tilt, the slow, careful sentences. I just needed to be alone. That night, I crashed at my friend Greg's place. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a blanket and pointed toward the couch. You want to talk? I'm here, he said. If not, that's fine too. I didn't talk. Not then. Just lay on the couch in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan and listening to Wally's collar jingle every time he shifted in his sleep on the floor nearby. Even the dog didn't know where to settle. The next morning, I went back to the apartment to get clothes. She wasn't there. I didn't expect her to be. But the lights were still on, her coat still hanging by the door. The smell of her perfume still faint in the hallway. I moved through the place like a ghost, like the memory of myself who used to live there. When I got to the bedroom, I stopped. The suitcase was still open on the bed, half unpacked. A careless detail. Or maybe intentional. I don't know. But right on top, in the front zip pocket, was a note, folded. My name on it. No envelope. I stood there for a long time before I opened it. Here's what it said. David, I never meant for this to happen. I know how empty that sounds, how useless. But it's true. I went looking for closure. That's all. But the truth is, I should have been looking at you, at us. What happened wasn't about him. Not really. It was about me being terrified of becoming someone's forever when I hadn't finished figuring out who I was. That's not an excuse. It's just what I was too cowardly to say out loud. You didn't fail me. You never did. I failed you by not being brave enough to bring my doubt to you, instead of sneaking it off to a hotel room with a ghost from my past. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I don't know if we can come back from this. But I hope for your sake that you get the life you deserve. Love. Rachel. I read it once. Twice. Folded it. Didn't cry. Not because I didn't want to, but because I'd already done all the grieving the moment I saw that first photo. This was just cleanup now. After that, I started moving fast. I called the venue. Canceled. Called the florist. Canceled. Called the photographer. Told him we wouldn't be needing the engagement photos turned into a slideshow anymore. Everyone was polite. One or two even said they were sorry. The woman at the bakery said, "Oh honey, do you want us to donate the cake?" I said yes. Let someone else enjoy what we didn't earn. That night, I packed a single bag, essentials only, left the rest. Wally and I drove upstate, to a cabin my uncle owned, the kind of place with no signal, no distractions, just trees. In time, I needed both. Needed to remember how to be alone without feeling like I'd failed at something. Because the truth is, when someone cheats on you, it's easy to feel like you're the broken one. Like their lie says something about your worth. It doesn't. It says something about their fear. Their cowardice. Their inability to tell the truth before it rots. Rachel didn't leave me for someone better. She ran from herself, and I was just the collateral. Up in that cabin, I took long walks. Cooked simple meals. Let Wally run wild in the woods. And at night, I sat by the fire and asked myself the question I'd avoided for too long. If I'd married her anyway, if I'd never seen those photos, would I have ever truly felt safe again? The answer came like a stone dropping into still water. No. And sometimes, that's the only closure you ever get. 2 weeks passed before I spoke to anyone who knew both of us. It wasn't out of shame or bitterness. I just didn't have the words yet. Didn't trust myself to talk about what happened without either falling apart or lashing out. But eventually, life calls you back. It was my buddy Tyler who finally broke the silence. We'd been friends since high school, the kind of guy who's seen you through breakups, road trips, and the one time you tried to build IKEA furniture without instructions. He showed up at the cabin unannounced. Said he figured if I wasn't dead or replying, I was either healing or hiding. Either way, he said, you shouldn't be doing it alone. We sat on the porch with beers in hand and Wally curled at my feet, and I told him everything, from the folder to the note, every lie, every photo, every second of it. When I finished, he just shook his head. Man, he said, she had you. And she rolled the dice on a maybe. I didn't say anything, because honestly, I'd already run out of new ways to feel disappointed. Tyler looked at me and added something that stuck. You know what the difference is between a good partner and a bad one? A good partner makes you feel more like yourself, not less. That one landed. Because looking back, I hadn't felt fully myself in months. Maybe longer. I was always adjusting to her temperature, her moods, her doubts. Like she was the weather and I was the guy checking the forecast every morning. And I guess that's the thing about slow betrayals. They don't come screaming. They come in whispers. In moments you excuse. In silences you explain away. Tyler stayed the weekend. We hiked, cooked actual meals, laughed more than I expected. And by the time he left, I wasn't whole. But I wasn't bleeding anymore either. I was starting to remember who I was before Rachel started rewriting me. And it made me realize something else. The people who love you don't need a performance. They just need your presence. Back home, I made one last decision. The apartment, our old apartment, I didn't want it. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like the set of a play where I'd been the only one who didn't realize the script had changed. So I gave my notice. Found a smaller place across town. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, wood floors, a little balcony where Wally could watch the world go by. It felt clean, unwritten, like a page not just turned, but a whole new notebook. I didn't block Rachel. I didn't need to. She didn't reach out again. And that silence? It didn't hurt. It felt earned. The wedding registry got deleted. The invites got recycled. The future we'd mapped out on napkins and notebooks faded like chalk after a storm. But something else took its place. Not anger, not revenge, just peace. And in that peace, I found the part of myself that didn't flinch when someone said forever. Because I knew now, I didn't need someone to promise me forever. I just needed someone who wouldn't lie during the layover. 3 months after the wedding that never was, I got an invitation. Not a metaphor. An actual, physical invitation. Cream cardstock. Gold lettering. Classy. It was from Megan, one of Rachel's bridesmaids. At first, I thought it was a mistake, or a joke, but it wasn't. She was getting married, and apparently, she still considered me a friend. She wrote a note on the back. David, I understand if you don't come truly, but I wanted you to know you're still welcome. I saw what you went through, and I hate how it ended. This isn't about sides. It's just about kindness. You were always one of the good ones. Don't let what happened make you forget that. It was kind, unexpected, honest in a way I hadn't expected from someone who'd stood beside Rachel and addressed the color of sea glass. I didn't go, but I sent a gift, a good one, a Dutch oven, something they'd used for years. And in the card, I wrote, wishing you both truth, laughter, and a love that doesn't flinch. No return address. Just those words. And then I let it go. Not because I needed to forgive Rachel, but because I needed to stop carrying a weight that wasn't mine to hold. But the thing about almost getting married? It leaves a mark. You don't realize how many versions of the future you've built in your head until you have to burn them down. The shared holidays. The baby names whispered in the dark. The Sunday mornings reading the paper in silence, not because there's nothing to say, but because everything that needed saying was already understood. I mourned all of it, not just the relationship, but the absence of the life I thought I was walking toward. People kept saying things like, you dodged a bullet, or better now than later. And yeah, they were right, but they were also missing something. I didn't just lose a partner. I lost my place in someone else's story. I lost the belief that we were building something real brick by brick, when really, I was laying foundation on sand. And realizing that? It guts you. Because suddenly you're looking back at 5 years and wondering how many of those bricks she laid with one eye on the exit. One night, I was walking Wally through the neighborhood. Cold air, jacket zipped to the chin, stars barely visible through the streetlight haze. And I saw a young couple across the street. She had her head on his shoulder. He was carrying groceries, and they were laughing about something only they could hear. For a second, my chest clenched. Not with envy, with memory. Because that used to be us. Used to be me. And that's when it hit me, the strangest kind of peace. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at her. Not at the man from the hotel. Not even at myself. Because I loved someone with my whole heart. I'd planned a life with integrity. I'd shown up every day trying to be the kind of man I'd want for my daughter, if I ever had one. And she couldn't meet me there. That wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of hers. The next day, I donated what was left of the wedding plans. The decorations. The favors. Even the backup pair of shoes I'd kept for the reception, just in case. And with every box I carried out, I felt lighter. Not because I was moving on, but because I was moving through. And there's a difference. One pretends nothing happened. The other says, yeah, it happened, but it doesn't own me anymore. That's where I was. Not healed, but healing. Not back to who I was, but becoming someone better. Someone who knew what it cost to stay and chose not to pay that price again. It was a Wednesday when I ran into her. Not Rachel, someone else. Her name was Elise. I was in line at the hardware store, holding a pack of light bulbs and a plant I had no idea how to keep alive. She was buying sandpaper and a small can of forest green paint. We both reached for the same penny someone had left on the counter. She smiled. Not flirty. Not staged. Just kind. We made small talk, then ran into each other again a week later at the bookstore down the street, and again at the dog park. Turns out her rescue mutt, Charlie, had taken a liking to Wally. They chased each other until they were too tired to pretend they weren't best friends. The universe has a weird sense of humor. We started slow. Coffee first, then long walks, then hours of talking on a park bench about things people usually only admit at midnight. Her divorce. My almost marriage. What we'd learned. What we were afraid of. She asked me once, what do you miss the most? I didn't have to think long. I miss believing that forever was simple. That if you loved someone enough, the rest would fall into place. She nodded, quiet, then said, maybe it's not simple, but maybe it's still possible. And just like that, something cracked open in me. Not a door. A window. Something smaller. Something that let in just enough light to see by, without making promises too soon. A year passed, not in a blur. In moments. Elise and I didn't rush. We didn't skip the hard conversations. We didn't pretend we weren't scared. But we chose each other, on purpose, fully aware of what could go wrong, fully committed to showing up anyway. That's what real love is. Not fireworks. Not vows written to impress a crowd. It's showing up. It's telling the truth when it's easier not to. It's letting the past inform you, but not define you. One night, I found the old manila folder in the back of a drawer I'd almost forgotten about. The photos, the receipts, the evidence, proof of a life that never quite happened. I sat with it for a few minutes. Then I fed it, piece by piece, into the fireplace. Not because I needed revenge, because I didn't need it anymore. It had served its purpose. It showed me what I'd survived, and what I'd built in its place. Elise and I live together now. It's not a fairy tale. It's better. It's real. We argue sometimes, over dishes, over schedules, over the best way to cook eggs. But we never argue over trust, because that foundation, that's solid. And every time I think about the man I used to be, the one who stood at the edge of a wedding he didn't know was built on lies, I feel something I never thought I would again. Gratitude. Because I didn't get the ending I planned, but I got the one I needed. And it led me here, to this quiet morning, to the smell of coffee, to Wally snoring at my feet, to Elise humming in the kitchen, to a life that didn't explode with drama, but bloomed, quietly, out of the ruins. And that's the kind of love worth waiting for. No folder, no lies, just truth, just home.